Hi, it's Steve Hargadon, and we're in the middle of day 2 of the Library 2.014 conference. We're so excited to have Joyce Valenza here. Joyce, what a pleasure.
Thank you, Steve.
We express appreciation to the sponsors and supporters of the conference. San Jose State University School of Information has been the conference founding partner, and Dr. Hirsch is our conference co-chair. We're delighted to have CISL on board, and thanks to Joyce for helping with that and representing them so well. Thanks to Follett School Library, to Library Journal, Blackboard Collaborate, Wilson Consulting, Wilma, and Counting Opinions. And this is a learningrevolution.com project. We encourage you to go to learningrevolution.com to see the other free events that we hold. There are lots of them across the learning fields. For those of you participating live, this is your chance to indicate where you are in the world at this time. Look to the left of the map for the star icon in the icon set and click on the map. You have to click the star twice usually for it to take. Certainly a strong North American representation. Do we have Puerto Rico in the room again? Do put in the chat where you are. I'll look at Norway, Jamaica. How fun. It's fun to know the time and the temperature. And even though we're going to move forward to give Joyce as much time as possible, do keep making notes in the chat. We hope that you find that connecting with others is the big part of this conference. Joyce, it's all yours.
Great, Steve. Thank you very much. So I've been thinking an awful lot, especially around times when we have these conferences, about librarians and the notion of social capital. I'm wondering if maybe in your hand, you could raise your hands. If the box underneath your name, there's a little hand raising. How many of you feel that you have a great deal of social capital? Okay. Oh, wow, my goodness. So it's a large number of you. So I'm going to be sharing why this is important, and perhaps we haven't really thought about, we may take it for granted, and we may take for granted that we can continue to grow it. Looks like almost the entire room. So thanks for your participation. Yay! So let's just move on and let's look at what social capital is, why it's important, and how we build it. So I'm not sure if I'm moving the slide, Steve. Oh, I see. So I've gotten some pushback on this title, I have to tell you. When I interviewed a lot of people, and I did crowdsource this, people were saying to me, Joyce, it's not about the social capital. We don't do this for the social capital. And I kind of disagree with that. But people kept saying, I don't like this term at all. I think what we're really doing is paying it forward. Well, let's take a look at that as well. I'm having trouble advancing the slides. A number of other people said to me that it's really not about paying it forward. It's really about community building. Well, I think that all of that is true. We need social capital for a variety of reasons. We need it to build our own knowledge, and you're seeing that happen today at this conference. You see the presenters and the participants building social capital as we move forward. But we're also using it to build our communities and to build support for our programs, but most importantly, to enrich and add to knowledge building and creation in our communities. So I'm going to give you some theoretical and research background before we get into the nitty-gritty. There's an awful lot of press today about whether libraries will or will not survive, but this late article kind of represents most of the feeling that libraries will only survive if the communities they serve want them and need them to. and I believe that. How could we possibly continue without the support of our stakeholders? And then how do we build that? So I kind of looked back at the people who are my own heroes and found inspiration from them. And let me share a few of their words before I share some of my own. One of my big heroes, of course, is David Lankeys. And what David tells us is that librarians build tools to enhance their true collection. The collection is not really what you might think it is. The collection really is the communities we serve. The community is our collection. In fact, at a closing keynote, he said, if you want to be a brilliant librarian, if you want to make a difference in people's lives, you must be active. You must see your community as your collection, and you must be into collection development every day, not sitting behind a desk, not waiting for someone to come and ask you for help, but being out there and saying, I'm here, you're important. You're not in the library business, you're not in the book business, you're not in the building business, you're not in the website business. You are in the community business. And I think that what David is talking about is social capital. People outside the library world talk about social capital a lot. In Daniel Pink's, I think it's his latest book, To Sell is Human, which really hit me hard, he talked about the fact that we're all in sales, of course, but he also talked about the importance of relationships and the importance of upserving. Upserving means doing more for the other person than he expects or you initially intended. It's taking those extra steps that transform a mundane interaction into a memorable experience. And the librarians I know are always upserving, don't you think? Well, at least most of us are, I think. This is coming, again, from outside the library world. Guy Kawasaki, who is a famous consultant and speaker and web design and slide expert, talks about the notion of enchantment. The greater your goals, the more you'll need to change people's minds and hearts and actions. This is especially true if you have few resources and big competitors, as libraries do. If you need to enchant people, you're doing something meaningful. If you're doing something meaningful, you need enchantment. Enchantment builds social capital in my mind. For those of us who claim to be introverts, I think it's time to wake up. In the world of social media, you can't afford to be a social media introvert. Before we go further, we probably should define the phrase social capital. A couple of people define it in different ways. Social capital has been defined as the resources and support accumulated by an individual, institution, or group through relationships and the possession of a durable network. In other words, the tappable goodwill that you have. Howard Rheingold, in his book NetSmart, includes this wonderful sketch note on the elements that go into making social capital. Paying it forward, reciprocity, which we'll talk about, doing favors, creating a network of trust. And we'll look at these in a little bit greater detail in a minute. Laura Solomon wrote the book that's the textbook for my social media class, The Librarian's Nitty-Gritty Guide to Social Media. And what Laura defines it as, it's what allows any organization or individual to make requests of its followers successfully. Think of social capital as the funds in a sort of intangible bank account that you add to by listening to, engaging with, and doing favors for others. Each time you make a request, you're drawing from that account. If no social capital has been established from which to draw, actions requested of others are likely to be ignored. And Laura describes Saving Ohio Libraries in her book, and the fact that in 2009, Ohio Libraries did not have enough social capital to mobilize its community, and how a number of librarians decided to help and to build that and to make sure that was no longer the case. And so, the slides are moving so slowly. It is not who you know, but who or what you have access to because of or via who you know. Social capital increases when you use it. The way I think about it is we have investments in two particular areas of our savings. One is for our professional, our personal, our egocentric social capital. And that's me as a professional. That's Joyce Valenza and what I do outside of Rutgers University right now. But it all connects with Rutgers. It all always connected with my school libraries or my public libraries. But we're also building library or institutional or community-centric social capital. And basically, the two feed each other. We learned from Milgram that anyone can be connected to any other person through a chain of acquaintances with no more than 5 intermediaries. That's the small world problem that he wrote about, I think it was in 1967. We also know that weak ties are the strongest ties in our network. And so if you look at those ties that are connecting that top little network to the one on the right side or the one on the bottom left, those are the most important ties. Those ties that connect you as a librarian to the education community or to the social anthropology community. These are the ties that move the message out, that amplify it. These are the ties that need to be nurtured. This is the one community member who can tie you to all the community businesses. This is the one community member who can tie you to the cultural groups in your community outside of your library network. These are those weak ties that we really need to focus on. And this is based on Mark Renovator's 1973 study, which a number of people have expanded on, that noted the strength of weak ties. We all tend to focus on the people in our echo chambers and our dear friends, but those are not the ties that are going to enrich our network, to create diversity, to make us more powerful, to help our libraries and our profession. And those are the ties also, by the way, that help you get jobs. Those are also called bridges. So when you create and share content across those weak ties, when you bridge, you reach new people, attract new opportunities, and access new content. And so that is kind of my theoretical grounding for today. And to sum that all up, in a network world, you are your content and connections. You are somebody's critical weak tie. Someone else is your critical weak tie. You can scan, curate, interpret, create meaningful content for others. You can bridge connections, and you can find and get what you need if you plan your social capital carefully. All right, so there are some old rules relating to social capital, and there are some new rules relating to social capital. In the old days, we had some rules that had some legs, and I bet folks are probably saying, Joyce, there's nothing new here. This is golden rule stuff. This is be not good to others. Well, Dale Carnegie and a few other folks who were very wise wrote all this stuff down. And what we're trying to do today is to translate Dale Carnegie's rules for how to win friends and influence people to a social media landscape. And of course, all of these things translate very, very easily. How do you smile in a social media context? How are you a good listener in a social media context? How do you talk in terms of the other person's interests? How do you make somebody feel important? And one of the things that I keep remembering, that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language. Thank you, Lisa. So we're applying these, but there are some rules, the old ones, that are not effective, and I think, Steve, this is where we're cueing the 30 seconds of this video that's coming up. Don Draper did get the job in the long run, but I don't think he effectively used social media. And if you were looking for the job today, he probably would have used different strategies. Steve, can you cue it?
I am. I'm putting the link in the chat, so if it doesn't pull up for you in the web tour, go ahead and click on the link in the chat. And Joyce, for the duration of the video, you're going to want to turn off your microphone.
Gotcha. 30 seconds up. Steve, that wasn't running for me. I don't know if anybody else is seeing it. Okay.
Joyce, you'll have to turn your mic back on.
Yes. What Don basically did there was attack Roger with a cold call. Roger didn't know who he was from a hole in the wall, and he waited around, and he used a relatively dishonest approach. It worked in the long run, but today we could incorporate far more effective, far more sincere approaches if we want to make a contact. And I think that approach is kind of old and seriously not effective. We can no longer rely on the kindness of strangers without building some relationships first. In addition to the old rules that we just looked at, there are things that just don't work for us anymore. Notebooks are no longer adequate containers for research, for communicating, for nearly anything else. Notebooks don't hold the sorts of things that we want to curate and share in an effective way. Similarly, the Rolodex really has very little impact anymore. It's very private. I need to share my contacts with other people. I need my contacts to be hyperlinked. I want to be able to make discoveries about the people on those cards, and that is no longer an effective container for sure. And another thing that isn't really ineffective is the traditional business card. I use things like About Me and LinkedIn, and the SIG in my email signature is a much more effective business card than the cards that my organization gives me to use. These are better strategies than handing somebody a paper card. I don't even know where the cards people give me are right now. So let's look at the new rules. And I grabbed all the new rules and I put them in this Kaggle. And I just love these words because they are words for what's worked for me all along, but what works in an amplified way for me right now. And I bet they work for you as well. So my first rule is create, contribute, and share. And what I forgot to tell you was that I decided to use social capital to build this presentation. And so all along, we're going to hear the voices of weak and strong ties. And so first, because we can't wait for all these videos to load, I'm going to play the audio of them, and I'm hoping you can hear them. We'll start with Kathy Schrock, who actually videotaped this for me for another.
Hello, everyone. This is Kathy Schrock, Rutgers College 79, Rutgers School of Communication and Information, and dated on UNFB 1981. I chose to video this in sepia because I've been doing this a really long time. I started in 1995 with Kathy Schrock's Guide for Educators, and as a librarian, I gathered resources for teachers and for myself, put them on the web so they would always be accessible. This has led to a huge amount of social capital for me. My name was on the website. People recognized my name. I was a trusted source in the area. And now, with the proliferation of Web 2.0 tools and communication and collaboration tools, I still am considered a trusted source. I encourage you to make sure that you share, you create a PLN, surround yourself with good people, but also make sure to pay it forward. I would consider it social capital as much as paying it forward. You do good things for people, and they'll do good things back for you. Have a wonderful induction. Thank you.
So everybody knows Kathy's name, but not only do you know Kathy's name and did Kathy get famous, Kathy contributed to the world of education and the world of librarianship. Another person I know who contributes a great deal is Gwyneth Jones. And Gwyneth has contributed in a variety of ways, but I'll let her tell you about some of her contributions.
Hey everybody, this is Gwyneth Jones, and I am the Daring Librarian. I was asked by Joyce to talk about social capital and what it means to me. I really think it means that my mom was always right when she said it's good to share. I find that sharing makes a big difference in people's lives when you do it generously and shamelessly across all social media networks, whether it's the Daring Librarian blog or my Twitter. I find that when I share things out, I get a lot more back. It is good to share. It's good to be giving. It is good to be generous and to use Creative Commons wherever possible. When I make posters using Comic Life or comic tutorials showing how to create techie things in easy ways with lots of screenshots, I find that it's wonderful to see them being published throughout the world in magazines and science museums and that kind of thing. Of course, it thrills me to no end, but it wouldn't have happened if I didn't use Creative Commons, if I wasn't such a social and shameless sharer. So I guess the part of me that wants to say, if you want to build social capital and other kinds of wonderful giving traditions to pay it forward, just be as generous as possible. Don't create things just for yourself. Create things for the world and give it out. And you'll find it all comes back to you. Cheers. Bye-bye.
So among the things that Gwyneth mentioned sharing was her posters, and they're adorable. She uses Comic Life, and there's a tutorial for nearly everything. That's one of the things that I think we're all doing these days. Even at the end of this conference, the archive is going to be there, and people will benefit from what we've shared years after we shut the doors on the live event. Similarly, there used to be people who said to me, why are you putting your slides up? People will steal them. People will take your ideas. You know, I think that we stand on the shoulders of giants. We learn from each other. What my experience is that I get speaking invitations because I share my slides. It's not like people say, oh, we don't want Joyce to come to that conference. We've already seen her slides. It's the opposite of that attitude. And so, you know, if we go to SlideShare or AuthorStream or YouTube, people are sharing so givingly, and their capital is built, it's not diminished. And I think that's a very exciting thing. Sorry about the slowness of these slides, I'm trying. In fact, you know, I'm always like struck by the adorableness of the way people put out their song parodies and inspire others in a meme. And a meme and that kind of sharing is another type of social media. If you haven't seen Nashville Public's All About the Books, take a look at that, but not right now. Take a look at it a little bit later. So we talked about creating and sharing, and here's another new rule. Reciprocate. Reciprocate is probably not a new rule. That was probably a rule that came down with from biblical times. But we can do it in ways that are completely scaled and ways we never really thought of before. The lovely thing, unlike a regular bank, social capital increases the more you give. The more you give, the more you get. Social capital builds. And so, let's take a look at the definition of the word reciprocity in terms of social network theory. It's a social norm of in-kind responses to the behaviors of others. In cultural anthropology, it's defined as people's informal exchange of goods and labor. And Laura Solomon talks about that in her book. Gaining social capital really means becoming a strong, consistent member of the online community. People expect reciprocity. Building a social media reputation means giving back. And I think so many of us in the room already know how to do that so well. Don't take anything for granted. Make sure that you respond to a generous act. I'm trying very consciously to do that all the time. Let me show you the different ways, and maybe unexpected ways, in the way people display reciprocity. This is Chris Harris from New York State, and I'm going to cue him up in a second. Here we go.
Most of the work that we do here at the Genesee Valley School Library System is built using Drupal. Drupal is open source. If everybody else didn't provide modules and support for Drupal, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And so in terms of social capital, it's important for me to give back in whatever way I can. I don't write modules, but I try to participate on the Drupal for Lib mailing list, answer questions, provide feedback, support, do whatever I can do to give back to open source. Open source is powering us, and so I want to make sure that I'm paying it forward with open source.
Rule number 3 is ask, and I asked Linda Braun to help me with that rule. Let me cue her up.
Hi everyone, I'm Linda Braun, the Youth Services Manager at the Seattle Public Library, and I'm LBraun2000 on Twitter. When I think about social capital, I think that we can't really talk about it abstractly. What you have to do is become a part of the world where these conversations can take place in order to help you, me, everyone else do their jobs better, understand the world more successfully, etc. So I think about social capital and I think about Twitter, because it wasn't until I really started using Twitter that I understood the value of social capital and what it really meant. Through Twitter, I can post crazy ideas to my network of friends and followers there and get some feedback. I can have things validated. I can look at what other people are talking about and go, oh, I hadn't thought about that way. Let me talk to this person about it. I can just find out so much, and not just about the library world, but I can connect with people who are in a wide variety of worlds, whether it's publishers, technologists, teens, entertainers, authors, just a wide variety of people who can get me outside of my own thinking, help me to think more broadly and more bigly. That's not a word, I understand that, but help me to think more about what I'm trying to do, why I'm trying to do it, and then give me ideas about how to be successful. So don't think about social capital as something you can learn about. You have to be a part of it in order to really use it and understand it.
Linda tells us a couple of things there. She talks about the notion of weak ties, how she's reaching outside the library community for answers to those questions that she's asking. And she's also talking about the notion of Twitter not being a one-way kind of street, in which I think a lot of people think of Twitter as I'm just tweeting out this or I'm tweeting out that, but it is a polling space. It's an asking for help space. When we were testing out Flipgrid, which was this was maybe over a year ago, maybe even longer ago than that, I wanted people to help me test drive it. So I asked people to help me create elevator speeches, and people helped me. And I continue to do that. I ask for help all the time, and we all grow because we all learn together. But I'm not shy about that. The chair of the English department a couple of years ago asked me she wanted to abandon MLA citation at the high school because somebody had told her that at the college level everybody was using APA. Well, I could have created a very formal survey and distributed it in a scientific way, but we didn't have enough time for that. And so what I did was I created a very quick and dirty Google Form survey, and then I tweeted it out. But I didn't tweet it out only to my network. I asked for help beyond my original network. I used the hashtag of academic librarians. I contacted the professors that I knew of library science. I used @ that I thought would hit the academic library world, and I got 307 responses in a couple of days from university people who told me they were a combination of answers, and you can read the article, the blog post if you want. But that kind of asking in a new way, an outside the box way, gave us the answer we needed much more quickly, and allowed me to address the principal and plan for the next school year. So asking is easier now than it ever was before. And I made a lot of contacts. I built social capital through the requests that I made. Shannon is in the room, I think, and Shannon and I are always asking for help with our presentations. In this case, Shannon was looking at what people thought the future would bring for school libraries. And in this case, and I do this as well, we had them use a back channel strategy, in this case a Padlet, for sharing that. And then we crowdsource, and then we will put up the responses to the questions that we've asked and share them in our presentations. In fact, this Flipgrid is an example of how I asked for help, and people jumped to help me out. So let's move to another rule. Another rule, and it's a very important rule, and I think maybe we take this one for granted too, is that we need to understand, emphasize, and respond to build social capital. And one of the libraries that I think does that the very best, and I love the idea of studying people's tweets, studying Facebook posts to see who does this social capital thing well and who doesn't do it so well, and how can I improve what I'm doing. One of the best examples I found is Topeka Public Library. And what I love about this was when the snow hit this year, they didn't write on a tweet, "We are closed today." Instead, they wrote, "About to close up the library today. Stay warm and safe out there." And they gave a link for closure-related announcements. They also suggest to their community that they stay warm and dry and borrow an ebook. So it's not just an announcement that we're closed, but they're thinking about how people will feel, how their regular users will feel when they discover that the library is closed. They're emphasizing, we know it's closed, we know it's cold, we know you'd rather be outside, we know you'd rather go to work perhaps, but you know, here's something that we can share with you while we're emphasizing with you. And there's so many ways to do that, and there's a few more examples on each of these slides that I'd love for you to take a look at. My slides will be available after the session, of course, because that's what we do. So, you know, it's not only Topeka, it's just this friendly way that you express yourself, that you use people's names, that you understand them, that when you see a patron or a customer or a student connecting with you, that you don't ignore that. And remember what Dale Carnegie said, the person's name is the sweetest sound to them. And so you respond to that and you retweet and you favorite. In this case, it was just an ordinary day, but Chattanooga Library, instead of making an announcement, said, "What would you do with this gorgeous day?" And they have a wonderful Instagram page where they archive beautiful photographs of Chattanooga. In a much more serious sense, and I don't think I want to play this video, but it is one about St. Paul Public that went a little viral, and this was produced by Google. But it was produced by Google because of the important tagline that St. Paul put in its campaign to help its growing immigrant population develop literacy skills and computer skills. They created a mobile bus that went out to where the community needed them, and their message was, "We are not in the book business, we are in the St. Paul business." And later on, when you have that link, don't go there now because I'm moving quickly. I really do hope that you'll see how powerful it is to rethink that attitude of empathy and service and response to the needs that you know exist. Similarly, at the university libraries, what we're seeing is a growth of a service called Library Concierge. And what happens with a library concierge, it's interpreted in different ways in different university libraries, but it's an avoidance of the bait and switch, which really reduces your social capital. So what we've done traditionally is we've brought students in and said, "Hey, come on in. We want to meet you. We want to really help you through your freshman experience," for instance. And then we do what we shouldn't do. We tell them all about how they really need to learn about databases, when really what they need to know is how to get to the next class, where is the bus schedule, what is a bursar, and all that other stuff. And so students who opt for it are assigned, freshman students are assigned a library concierge who will follow them, who will answer their questions, who will meet their information needs as a freshman and as they move through the university, building the relationship with the library and the library as a social entity in their lives. And I love that idea. And universities are doing other things. I fell in love with this. Apparently it's been done for years, but I just discovered it. That at the most stressful times in a student's life at the university, they'll bring pets into a specific room and they'll tell the students, "Hey, we know you're stressed out. We know you got papers to write, but come on in and pet. this adorable doggie, and they'll post that on their Facebook page. And I just think that's a lovely service and a break in the day, and it shows the humanity of the library and their empathy with stressed out students. What can you do in the type of library that you work in that's similar to that, that really shows your empathy? Rule number 5, and I hope we get through all my rules, are to reach out to both your strong and weak ties. And this is I was forever changed by the statement teacher made at a conference I attended a couple of years back. She said that she was in a job interview, and the principal was a teacher. Principal said, well, why should I hire you? And the young woman said, when you hire me, you're not hiring me alone, you're hiring all the smart people I know. And I went, oh my God, absolutely, that would be true of me, and I bet it's true of everybody in the room. Because when I don't know how to do something, I know how to connect with people who know how to do it. And it's my connections not only with my school library friends, but those weak ties, those ties in the social studies world, or the world of biology in which I'm not really connected. And so all of those things are really important. So those weak ties are really important. And I'm going to bring in, I asked so many of my heroes to visit with me today, but I'm going to bring up Dave Lankeys on the importance of reaching out and on the importance of strong and weak ties.
What I tell students and I tell advisees and I tell anyone who will listen to me, particularly people new to the profession, is you need to have a crazy ideas list. That has a list of smart people and interesting people that you can take your ideas for papers, projects, what have you. And you can say, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? What do you think about this? I've never had a project that hasn't gotten better by having smart people comment and talk on it. Now, that list used to be something where I would call people up, or that I'd talk to them on the phone, or that I would take a couple of weeks and play telephone tag or send them an email and hope for the best that it didn't get lost in the thousands of emails they were dealing with. These days, with Twitter and Facebook, I have access to not only quickly get that out there, quickly get to these folks, but to have a wide range of people that I never thought about before. But suddenly I'm getting feedback in ways that I didn't think about. You know, when the Atlas first went out, the humanities folks got about it, they started me thinking very differently about some of the stuff I was talking about. That idea to go out and reach a diverse population very quickly on ideas, take in that input, work that input, and turn it into presentations, turn it into projects, turn it into proposals. It's essential to what I do, and I think it's essential to what librarians do in general.
So there are different responses to that question about these strong and weak ties. And one of the things that we discovered, and I know a few of you in the room have also discovered this, is your connection as librarians to the world of authors and
my name is John Schumacher, aka Mr. Shu. My Twitter handle is Mr. Shu Reads. I am a better teacher. I'm a better librarian. I am a better teacher librarian because of social media. I am so thankful for all of the librarians, all of the teachers, the authors, the illustrators, the publishers who post content every day that motivates me and inspires me to become a better teacher librarian. It is because of my involvement in Twitter that so many opportunities have come to me. I've been able to premiere the book trailers for the one and only Ivan and Wonder, both of which have spent 69 and 59 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list. I've been able to interview authors. I've been able to invite experts into my library. Now, I'm not saying that these things have been done to benefit me. These things have been done to benefit my students. Every decision that I make is made with kids in mind. Every time I agree to present at a conference or attend a workshop, I'm doing it for my kids. Whenever I invite an author into my school, I'm doing it for my kids. Whenever I get to interview someone because of a relationship established on Twitter, it is because of my kids. Everything that we do is for children. Everything that we do is to make the world a better, warmer place.
And that opinion was echoed by Matthew Winter, and I'm going to just bring his picture up and cue his video. And Matthew has a very cool story.
My name is Matthew Winter. I'm the author of the Busy Librarian blog and the
host of the Let's Get Busy podcast, and I'm here to talk to you about social capital. Well, let's talk about me and authors and my relationship with them and how I think they're the coolest people in the entire world. I've built up a following through the podcast and have gotten to interview some really cool authors through the podcast, basically because I feel that I am passionate about what I do and whom I'm talking with, and I don't shy around being a fan of things that I love. And so getting to know these different authors has led to them recommending their friends to get onto the podcast, and them recommending their friends, and they're recommending their friends. And then within a short amount of time, I was interviewing Nick Bruhl, who is the author of Bad Kitty, and Raina Telgemeier, who's the author of Smile, and my hero, Seymour Simon, who's written over 250 nonfiction books, and who is maybe the reason why I read at all now. So none of that would happen if it weren't for me reaching out to others and being passionate about what I do and being professional, but also enthusiastic and real with other people. So I think that that's how one thing has led to another, and it's all good.
So one of the things that Matthew shared with me was an exchange that he had with Seymour Simon, and I love this. That after getting to know each other through social media and Matthew reaching out, I see all the things you're doing on Twitter, Matt, and I hate to say this, but I'm so proud of you. I have no idea why. I'm not your father, but I feel sort of fatherly towards you. And so, yeah, that just happened. Don't you love it? I mean, these are the kinds of relationships that you can build through social capital. And so, we have people like Justin Henke who are making a name and sharing what they're doing with teens. And I don't have his picture up. I'm not sure I'm going to have time for all those videos, but I'm going to share the whole thing with you about how he reached out to folks, and people helped him build this makerspace, and librarians all over. And he was one of the pioneers here. But he reached out to all sorts of people, and the makerspace happened. And this reaching out to strong and weak ties, it is what enables me to bring into my class people of all sorts. So I bring in researchers like Allison Head, and really, really famous social media gurus like Howard Rangel and Billy Parrott from New York Public, and authors and university folks. But it's basically, once you build this capital and you make these ties, you can make those asks, and I'm just beginning to learn the word ask as a noun. Here's an example of, I'm not going to show you all these videos, but when Live a Break came into our somewhat virtual book club, I know Jane's here and Shannon's here, when the authors come in, the kids think we're the coolest things ever, but the authors think it's really cool that we invite them in these hangouts too. And so over the years, the club continues, even though I'm no longer a school librarian. But over the years, we were able to bring in people like Cory Doctorow and Lori Holt Anderson, and I'm delighted to say that my kids learned how to do this, and I know that's true of other people too, that they started bringing in their weak ties. And so this is an example on the top picture of a poet, Sonia Renee Taylor, who my student Shannon decided to bring in, and she said, "Can I do it?" And I said, well, this is a library resource, you know, it is your Google Hangout. Open it and do it, and just let people know you're doing it after school and let them join you. You know, it's basically just one of the tools in our toolkit. It's one of the things we do within our library community. It's nothing special. When we read books, we invite authors in. This is Soraya Paksa, who came for several years when the students were reading Thousand Splendid Suns, and she's an Afghani women's rights advocate. And so let's move to the next rule. And our next rule is amplify the signal. There are so many ways that your voice can be louder than it ever was before. Through our conference suites, for some of us who are sketchnoting, for us, some of us who are blogging, for the folks who will spread the word of the Library 2.014 conference to others who weren't here and encourage them to see the archive. It is really important to amplify the signal to make sure that the rest of our community and other folks who could benefit from all that we are learning gets shared. And I wanted to invite Jessamine West in to share her point of view on amplification.
Hey, my name's Jessamine West. I do the Librarian.net blog, and I'm Jessamine on Twitter. Social media is a thing I've been doing pretty much since there was social media. I had a really early blog. It turns 15 this month, if you can believe it. And being an early blogger meant that other people could see what I had to say, which being a
And we're trying. Sorry about that.
Hey, my name's Jessamine West, if you can believe it. And being an early push my let's share everything agenda was super important. Having an early blog meant that I got the attention of the people who were inviting bloggers to the Democratic National Convention, and I got to go there, meet other bloggers, and sort of amplify signal for the library and sharing and copyright and whatever topics that were there, which could help other people who couldn't go know about it. Now a lot of times I hang out at home doing my local work and pay attention to the stories of other people who are going to the conferences, the events, and the things that I don't always go to because I'm home teaching people how to use computers in Central Vermont. I think social capital has been really helpful to me, and I think as an institution that's not known for having a lot of capital, it can really solve a lot of problems in library land and emphasize that sharing is really what we're all about, and this is another thing that we really just do well at.
I love the idea of that early on. Jessamine recognized that her voice, her lone library voice at the Democratic National Convention, could amplify the library voice of all of us, and that was really powerful. So we can amplify our voice in a number of different ways, and a lot of us are conference bloggers. And when I went to IASL, it was one of my only IASL adventures, but it was in Doha, and everything was new and exciting to me. Bringing everything together in a Storify so other people who couldn't travel that far could see allowed me to amplify the signal of that really important conference, and I know that many of us do that all the time. But I don't think we recognize how important it is. We're doing it, we're pushing it out, but we don't always pat ourselves on the back and say, hey, that was great that you did that. You amplified that for thousands of people. One of my best examples of amplification is Brad Overnell Carter, who is at many of the tech conferences that I attend, and his sketch notes, in addition to the tweets, really make a conference session sticky. You can go back, you can visit them. They are from South by Southwest as well, and it's just really a powerful remembrance. It's a study of the structure of a conference presentation. You can find those all over Pinterest. Curating is another important social capital building activity. And it's important because right now we've got so much to curate. We have media that comes in all formats. Again, it doesn't fit in those notebooks, those spiral notebooks, those loose leaf notebooks. We also have all sorts of new tools with which we can curate our knowledge, add our own value to it, and make it make sense for others as a human filter. I use a number of different strategies. I know a lot of you do as well. Lately, I've been creating an index over all of it through my LibGuides, and also more recently, I've just created a very visual Symbaloo as more of an index to the things I need to get to, and I hope other people will use to get to very quickly. And some of those efforts, like one of those little tiles, really goes back to a Samore. This Samore I created as a lesson for my own students, and I curated the stuff I wanted to teach about in a lesson. But right now, at the time I took that screenshot, it had over 12,000 views. So I was curating, I was amplifying the message, I was sharing, I was following the rules that I think are the new rules for today. Whenever any of us does a LibGuide, recognize that that LibGuide is for your students. It amplifies your voice for your students. It helps curate material for your students. But it also is used in the LibGuide community for everybody. People can make a template of it and use it across library land. I've done that for my university courses as well as my high school courses. And there are some beautiful examples of curation in all sorts of curation platforms. Alita Hansen at Weston High School Library says that her books are flowing off the shelves now that she's created genre boards using Pinterest, and there are some very creative and quirky boards up there. Similarly, I think this one is Oakland Public Oakland Library Teen Zone. They've got some of the greatest genre boards out there and things that the kids really want to explore. And I love their work as a model, and they include teen suggestions as well. So there's so many examples of curation out there. Billy Parrott from New York Public tweets and leads people back to his curations on both Pinterest and Instagram. And some of these are what people are wearing on Downton Abbey. Some of these have to do with the various years that Mad Men is going through. And they're really popular, and they lead people back to the collections. Chattanooga Library has a lovely, I mentioned earlier, has a lovely Instagram collection of photographs that relate to the library and the Chattanooga community. So curation is another one of those rules, and of course I'm a mother, so I bring up my daughter's curation strategies, and she's curating for another community of practice, the art community and the art teacher community, and her little Tumblr blog has her art and her experiences and her lessons, and it's just to show that we're not just doing it for the library community, we're doing it well beyond. And I think I'm going to skip a few slides so I can get to a big ending and maybe take some questions here. The thing to remember about this is that social media and social capital makes you realize that you're not alone, and that there are people out there who have the same crazy ideas that you do. And here's Justin Henke from Nashville Public, who I mentioned earlier. And let me get his thing up. I hope you guys are okay because I can't see you when I'm moving around navigating.
Hi, I'm Justin Henke at the Chattanooga Public Library. My Twitter handle is @JustinLibrarian. So in about 2008, I started my job as a librarian, and I thought I was crazy because nobody else shared the same ideas that I did. Video games and libraries and all these cool technology things. I thought I was like the only person in the world. So I joined Twitter, and I quickly found out that I'm not the only person in the world that wants to do these things and have fun at work. And it made me grow as a person. It made my world grow a lot bigger. It made me feel less crazy. So I think that's the kind of good social media can do. And also, these people that are my professional colleagues are now my friends. I've had some librarians over to my house. Actually, yesterday, we had a bonfire at my house. Everybody that I work with and some other librarians from out of town, we had a bonfire. We ate some spaghetti. We roasted some marshmallows. And they're my friends. And they're my colleagues. And I learned so much from them professionally and personally. And I grow as a person. That's the kind of awesome that social media can do.
So I love these stories. I'm going to skip a few slides, and one of the new rules that I'm skipping is about really taking care of your brand, and my slides will be available so you can take a look at it. Another thing that I think is really important is the notion of crowdsourcing. And let me see if I can move to the next slide. Crowdsourcing is important. We build things like this presentation on crowdsourcing. In fact, if you want to go back to all of these little videos, there are many more there than I was able to show. We put this together in a piece of free software called Flipgrid. Actually, it's not free, but it's not very expensive. People have been putting together books, open access books, using tools like Smashwords and putting them out for the good of the community and building social capital through these publications. And so, this is a summary of those new rules that I shared, those verbs that I think are really important. This is what I think is a beautiful cloud of those words. I think what's really important is that there's no reason to wait to do any of these things. you just hit go. If I were to show you a couple more, we had Nikki Robertson talking about how she just hit go on, she had an idea for doing TL News Night, and she said, well, what do you think about this? And I said, just hit go. And that happens with starting a hashtag. Stephen Bell talked about starting his blog and his network, which is still going strong after several years. It's just about having a good idea, and once you think it out a little bit, hit the start button. And you will build social capital. I'm so sorry these slides are going so slowly. And there are new questions as well as new rules. How can I use the tools at hand to build community, to contribute to and make a difference, to continue to learn and grow? And how will you leverage your connections, the connections we build tonight or today, to build social capital? I have a big ending coming up. I hope the video works. How can you use your investment to engage, improve, do good and for your community and make the world a better place? You're not doing it to build social capital, as you heard through these videos. You're doing it because it's the right thing, because it will benefit your community and your stakeholders. You will benefit along the way. You will grow along the way. You do it, you build your social capital for the most important reason, because you care. And there's nobody more iconic for me, an old school, but most iconic example of somebody who
I'm going to run it,
years of his life,
and I put the link in the chat. If it doesn't come up in the web tour, then just click on the link in the chat.
And I have a clip. And Steve, can you run that? If not, I'll do the audio, but I want to give it a try. Make sure you pay attention to the description.
I get this.
Joyce, I had to turn your microphone off, so you'll have to turn it back on.
So none of this is new, but our opportunity to scale our social capital, to make a difference among a larger community than the folks in George Bailey's town, all that has changed. And I encourage you to take a look at the slides, to look at the video that I'll share, to use these examples as models, to learn from each other, and to understand that building social capital is not just a selfish endeavor. It's an endeavor that enriches our community, that allows us to share and reciprocate, that grows library for all the people that we serve. And so I don't know if we have any time for questions. We probably don't. But what do you think, Steve?
I think you're leaving us with the big finish. And if we don't finish, then people won't have a chance to take a quick break before getting into the next session. So can we have them email you questions?
Absolutely. Here's my contact information.
Joyce, that was spectacular.
Thank you. Thanks. I'm glad you liked it. And I'll post my slides so everybody has them.
Okay. And I'm going to put in the chat right now, so it's in the recording, a link to all of the Flipgrid recordings, so that if people are looking for them, they can find them in here as well.
Great. Thank you, Steve. And thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. It was fun. Keep in touch.
The applause icon is now under the smiley face. Go to the smiley face, click applause. Joyce, that was terrific. So glad to know you. Thank you for giving us of your social capital today. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Lots more to come today. Take care.